Hi, let us talk about the process of doing the literature review. In these videos, I'm going to share with you my personal experience as well as the technique that I use to do my literature review. I find these techniques to be quite effective. It saved me a lot of time, and at the end of the day, I realized that the quality of my literature review increases. Now, if you are among those having the difficulty with the literature review, maybe you could consider using this technique. I believe as much as it is useful to me, it will be useful to you as well. Now, before we start, let us talk about the main problem that students often encounter while doing the literature review. The first problem here it will be there are so many papers and there are so many informations which you do not know whether they are useful or not, and then you cannot recall all the informations even though you have read the paper. Not only that, even though you can recall certain informations that you have read through, you have the difficulty to trace down the original paper. You can't remember which papers that you should refer for that particular informations, especially you have read through so many papers. Now, even though you can locate the papers, the next time you come back and search for that particular paper, you will have to read through the entire paper again for you to pinpoint the specific statement that you would like to refer to. All these papers are due to the limitations of a person unable to recall so many things at once, unable to properly sort the informations, unable to quickly identify the source of that particular informations, and also unable to quickly pinpoint which specific statements carry those informations. Now, this process of doing the literature review helps to resolve this problem. Hear me out. Maybe you can gain something useful. The flowchart here shows the process of doing the literature review. The problem that I have mentioned just now lies at this stage. Now, if you do not do this stage properly, you will find your literature review out of the directions, very time consuming, very discouraging. At the end of the day, you feel lacking of confidence. Now, if you use the right technique, everything becomes clearer and easy to trace, and this is going to save you a lot of time. We're going to go through this step by step. Without further ado, let us get started. First, it's about searching for the references. This is a typical process of doing the literature review. You're going to search for the relevant publications from various databases, from the Science Direct, from Google Scholar, and any other relevant journals. At this stage, you're going to find the references as many as you could. Since it is at the early stage of your literature review, you do not know yet whether that particular paper is going to be useful to you or not. It is fine. Just get the papers first, as long as it is relevant to you. You may look into the title as well as the keywords for you to quickly identify whether the papers is related to your topic. Pay more attention to those high-impact journals as well as those being published within the recent 5 years. You may also refer to the reference list from the papers which you identify to be relevant and get all those relevant papers being cited by that particular paper. Get as many references as you could. After that, you may start reading the paper. Previously, we talked about the process of doing the technical reading, which depend on the stages of your literature review. You do not need to read every single words from the entire paper. You need to be clear what is the purpose of reading that paper. At the early stage, when you want to know whether the paper is relevant or not, you will pay your attention to the titles and the keywords. Later, you want to know whether the paper is useful to you or not. Then, probably you can look into the abstract, conclusions, and probably the introductions. Now, if you want to know more, especially the in-depth discussions or how they perform the analysis, then you will read the rest of the paper. Along the way, you will identify certain useful informations. Now, this brings us to the stage of quoting and classifying the informations. You can use the features in the Microsoft Word related to the table of content as well as the navigations panels. This shall help you to do the classifications. Let me demonstrate to you the process. Let's say now as you're reading through a paper, you find that this statement is quite important, which may be useful to you in future. But at the moment, you cannot tell. It doesn't matter. At least you need to first keep a record of that particular statement. Copy the statement and then paste it to the Microsoft Word. Don't modify the statement. You will keep the statement as it is, including the citations of those statements. As later, you might need to come back and refer to the statement, and probably you might need to refer to the source of the references of that particular paper. Now, this process is for you to keep a record so that you can quickly trace the relevant papers in future. Now that you have quoted the entire statement here, make sure you do the proper citing, such as using the endnotes. Of course, you will have to get the relevant informations in the libraries of the endnotes. Now that you have the entire statement quoted and also the endnotes to identify where you can find the relevant statement, in case that you will need to come back and refer to that particular paper, you can simply search for the paper by the authors. By hovering over the cursor onto the references, it will identify to you the numbers of the papers that in the endnotes library. This helps you to quickly trace the particular paper. Let's say now you have found the paper through your endnotes library. For you to quickly pinpoint where the statements come from, you can simply quote a part of the statement, paste it on the find bar. It will identify to you where this statement comes from. This helps you to quickly identify the source of the paper, which is through the endnotes. Find the papers and then use the search bar in the PDF file for you to quickly identify the source of the information. You will get the entire statement. Through this, you can quickly pinpoint where the statements come from. You don't have to read through the papers again, trying to locate the statement. Sometimes you may need to quote the entire paragraph. For example, this, paste it in the Microsoft Word. Get the endnotes to help you to trace the source of the paragraph, so that later you can come back to that particular paper for that particular paragraph. If you wish to save your time more, you can use the underlying features of the Microsoft Word. Something like this. In order for you to quickly pinpoint the main point that you are referring from this paragraph. Or something like this. Why do you need to underline the main point? It is because later when you gather the informations, you will find there are a lot of informations in your Microsoft Word. In order to minimize the time that you spend to read through the statement again, by underlining the main points here, draw your attentions to the main point directly. Now, as you can see here, you have gathered quite a number of statements from your references. The more that you gather the informations, the messier that you will find your Microsoft Words. This may not be an issue when you have limited amount of information, but it's definitely going to be an issue. For example, you have more than 15,000 of words. Imagine you have gathered so many informations here. Later you will have difficulties to quickly pinpoint which information is referring to what and where to find the relevant informations. This comes to the importance of classifying the informations by using the Microsoft Word features. Coming back to this example, let's say you have quoted a statement here. You need to identify the main theme or the main point that this statement is referring to. Let's say for this statement, positive effects. And probably for another statement here, it is about the negative effects. You give a subtitle for that particular informations. Later, when you identify other informations that can be classified under those subtitles, you will put them under the relevant subtitles. Copy and paste the statements. Get the endnotes to cite it so that you can trace it later. Then you classify those under the subtitle. Now this brings to the next problem. When you have so many subtitles later, you will still find it messy. Now you're going to use the features in the Microsoft Word. First, highlight the text. Then go to the Reference tab. Under the table of content, click Add Text. Then select the levels of the tables of content. Let's say now we use this as the level 1, and then probably this one, it will be the level 1 also. In the case that you have some other subtopic, which you can go for the level 2 or level 3, you will do the same. Add text, level 2, or probably level 3. You will find these functions helpful for you to do the classifications of the informations that you find from the literature review. In order for you to quickly trace the relevant subtitles, you can go for the View tab. Under the section Show, click the Navigations panels. It will appear to you the subtitles or subheadings for the informations. Now in futures, when you need to quote certain statement and then group it under certain subtitles, you can quickly click to the navigations panels and simply adding the informations. You're going to repeat this process as you read along. Gather as many informations as you could. For example, something like this. It doesn't matter when it is messy at this stage. Messy is a part of the literature review. Don't worry about it. More important, you will have the record where you can trace the statement, and you have highlighted the main points here which might be useful to you. Now if you need to trace the paper, you get it from the database or library of the EndNotes. Open the file, quote a part of the statement, search from the file. Then you can pinpoint the statements that you are referring to. Now if you need to refer to the references mentioned in the paper, you may again refer to the paper. Use the search bar for you to find the relevant author. And then from the reference list, you can find the relevant papers, get the titles, and search through the internet. Now at this stage, you're going to find it as many as possible. Since you have everything well organized, the more information you get, the merrier. This is to prevent any potential bias in terms of the references that you used. Of course, this is going to spend you some time reading, taking down the statements, doing referencing, and use the tables of content for you to classify the subtitles. But you know you are doing it right. You know where you are heading, and you know that you are not going to get lost. This is going to boost your confidence, and you will find this process to be quite engaging. Only that you need to have some patience. Next, the question here is, when do you stop? Definitely, this process cannot last forever because you have following steps to go through until you complete a paper. Normally, I would recommend to you to gather as many informations as you could. If possible, reaching to the point of saturations. What does it mean by the point of saturations? It means that if you do further searching, further reading, there might not be new insights. The amount of informations or the content that you have gathered are more or less there. By then, even though you search for more informations, it will end up to be more or less similar content. Once you have reached this point of saturations, then probably you could start considering writing. Now the next question is it a must for you to go for the point of saturations? The answer is no. It is not a must. Reaching the point of saturations is favorable. You don't have to get everything perfect or everything well in place before you can start. You can still gather the informations later. This is because this process here is for you to gather as many informations which is considered relevant, and you only take down the informations which you feel have the potentials to be useful. It might end up a big chunk of it is not going to be useful. Or probably when you start writing your literature review, you find some other directions. So you will consider this when you are doing this stage. You don't have to reach to the limit of the point of saturations. Try to go for the stage which you find the information is more or less enough. Or if you have certain schedule, let's say you allocate 1 week for you to do this process. By completion of that particular 1 week, you should end this process before you are entering the next stage. Now, if you really want to ask for the rules of thumb, probably you could consider from the aspects of the numbers of words. Let's say now you are targeting in writing a literature review papers about 8,000 words. Let's say you're going to foresee that it might end up quite a number of them might not be useful, or maybe they are useful, but their points agree with some others references, which you can point out the points with several references consolidated in one statement. This is going to significantly reduce the amount of the words, which at the same time you do referencing for more than one papers. For example, the one that you've seen here. One statement carry a lot of references. Knowing that you are targeting about 8,000 words for your papers, as you gather along the informations, you realize that the numbers of words has already significantly exceeded your target numbers of words. Probably exceeded by 50%. That means 12,000 and above. Probably you could consider put this stage on hold first. Enter the next stage. Because later, after you are writing the literature review, you will find yourself certain gaps that needs to be filled, and then you're going to search for more papers in order to fill the gap. Now, if your targeted numbers of words is 8,000, for example, the numbers of words that you gather here is less than 8,000, you might know that it might not be sufficient for you to complete the entire paper. It is fine if you choose to pause this stage and straight away enter the following stages. But later, you're going to find yourself spending more time for you to fill the gaps, finding the papers, and you might have a problem when the amount of information is insufficient. You might not get sufficient ideas to print out your points while writing the literature review, or you may be biased. I guess the total numbers of words here can be a good indicators to you when you should consider pausing this stage. When you have more information, it is easier for you as it gives you more choices. Sometimes different papers are giving the similar points, only that they express in different ways. It gives you some ideas how to express it in your own way, and this can subsequently reduce the amount of time that you spend in writing the literature review.